Hello everyone, welcome to this week's GT Sport Day Race C strategy guide, and finally after a number of lacklustre weeks we have got something to get our teeth into as we take Group 3 machinery to the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pace to give it its Sunday name, or better known as Interlagos. So here is the detailed settings for this one. 13 laps to negotiate, fuel consumption at times 2, tyre wear at times 6, and most importantly we have got a choice of tyres, with the racing soft and the racing medium tyres being available, and as always in that situation we will assume that those mediums at the very least will be mandatory. So the circuit we're visiting for this week's daily race C needs little introduction. The Jose Carlos Pace Autodromo in Brazil, better known as Interlagos, probably one of the best circuits on the F1 calendar, always brings out good racing. In terms of Gran Turismo, a very balanced circuit, should see a good number of the Group 3 cars competitive. No doubt a couple of cars will come to the fore and be the most popular choices, as is always the case, but a lot of the Group 3 machinery tends to be very close around this circuit, so do just, to quote Tidgney, take out your favourite Group 3 car and do enjoy this week's race, because I think we're in for a bit of a cracker indeed. So for the test runs in this strategy guide, we are taking out one of Group 3's most dependable workhorses. We're in the Mercedes AMG GT3 from 2016. A very balanced car, decent straight line speed, pretty good in the corners, pretty handy on tyre wear, which is going to be crucial for this race, and it tends to be a car that handles very well once the tyres get a little bit worn. I've enjoyed driving this car around this circuit in this combination with these settings, putting this strategy guide together, so do check it out as the week progresses. I think it will be a strong contender indeed. Okay, with all that out of the way, now let's move on to the strategies. And for this week we've kind of flipped things on their head a little bit. Normally we just start with the 1 stop, then the 2 stop, then the no stop, but this week we're going to actually start with the no stop strategy. Now I must always stress, I put these guides together before we get the full detailed settings on the Monday morning, so I'm never entirely sure whether it's going to be both tyres that are mandatory or just the harder compound. For the guide we just assume that the mandatory tyre will just be the harder compound, in this case the mediums. So the first sort of strategy I've tested out is to see whether the no stop is going to be possible if it indeed is just the mediums that are mandatory. So 13 laps on the mediums with 6 times tyre wear. A little bit of quick maths tells me we're asking the tyres to do the equivalent of 7 to 8 laps. Now that should be within the capability of the medium tyres, but they're certainly not going to be a lot of fun to drive on towards the end of the race. And that definitely turns out to be the case if you try to do the no stop strategy on the mediums. We started off in the 131s with the tyres pretty fresh, dropping into the 32s by lap number 5, keeping it in the 32s until lap number 11. But by lap 12 we're sort of plunging into the 1 minute 33s, and on lap 13 the car is a real handful indeed as the sort of rear tries to step out pretty much every corner. We're going to zoom on the tyre wear here. We'll get a look at how the tyres are looking right at the end of the race. So sitting around about 50% on that right rear. The rest of the tyres not a whole lot better, but certainly the car is a big handful at this point, and we finished with a 133.5. But we've managed to survive, managed to keep the car on the track. It's a pretty representative run for the no stop, and the finishing time on the screen there at 20 minutes 05.4. So that is the benchmark as we move on to the next strategy. And for the next strategy we're going to look at the 2 stop, and that's going to involve doing 2 stints on the soft tyres and then just a single lap on the mediums at the end. Now I always just do the sort of more traditional route of doing these strategies. Of course when it comes to a strategy like this you can mix things up a little bit. Starting towards the back of the grid, you maybe start on the medium tyres and then move on to the softs, but we're just trying to kind of keep everything sort of fairly consistent, and we don't have any issues with traffic, so this is more just a kind of a clear run, test run with optimal conditions. So we will start on the soft tyres, so 6 laps in the first stint, 6 laps in the second stint, and then a single lap on the mediums at the end. Now if we compare the lap times on the soft tyres here compared to the medium tyres, on the no stop run we were doing 1 minute 31.5s, 0.6s in the early stages on the medium tyres. You can see here on the soft tyres we're around about 8 tenths of a lap quicker initially, and even by lap 5 on the soft tyres we're still quicker than our quickest lap on the mediums. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. Good information there on how the tyres are performing relative to each other over the opening 5 laps. But this is going to be our in lap here for this 2-stop run, and this is going to give us an idea of what the pit loss is going to be and any issues with the fuel, which we probably worked out from the no stop that the fuel is no issue whatsoever. So into the box we come, get a new set of soft tyres on. We're going to do a second stint on the soft tyres here. Interlagos is quite an unusual circuit in that it's quite a long run from leaving the pits, or quite a long pit lane to get back onto the track. The pit loss comes in between 8.1 and 8.5 seconds. Now I've left a bit of variable there because the way I work it out when I sort of compare not doing a pit stop to a pit stop, I sort of have to negotiate the first complex of corners, so that could throw in a little bit of variable, but it is no more than 8.5 seconds, but it could be as low as 8.1 seconds depending on how certain things work out. Now one slight caveat I wanted to add about the pit stops is that for some reason in Gran Turismo Sport the pit stops can change in time depending on how many cars are on the track. So the pit stop that you see there is actually a second quicker than what we'll get when we're in the real lobby, so I will calculate that and adjust for that when I sort of calculate the finishing times and do the comparison at the end. I don't know why I decided to do that in the game. It's just one of these little quirks about Gran Turismo, just something I've picked up through doing strategy guides. I'm always quite thorough when it comes to the pit stops and the pit losses. I'll go back and I'll check other things, maybe check some other videos, but we'll just put it down to be one of these little Gran Turismo things. Anyway, back to the strategy that we're looking at. We've made our second pit stop. You can see the sort of second stint on the soft tyres there, but we're around about 3 to 4 times quicker on the fresh tyres compared to the first stint. Then sort of the lap time's not dramatically differently. The fuel's not burned off enough to kind of really dramatically alter the lap times compared to the first stint. So we'll just fast forward through the end of this last lap. We'll rejoin the action on the drag up the hill towards the finish line. Now remember, when we get the finishing time here, we will be adding 2 seconds on for the additional time that will be taken in the pits in the real race. But across the finish line we come now. That finishing time should pop up. We've got 2 minutes 05.4 to beat. Now that's a 20 minutes 0.6. We'll add on more 2 seconds. That's a 20.02.6, which puts us 2.8 seconds faster than the no stop. So let's now move on to the one-stop strategy. This is the sort of strategy you would think initially, just looking at the settings, looking at the pit loss, that would probably be the most prevalent strategy, probably the best strategy. But let's find out if it's going to be that way as we sort of come towards the end of our stint here on the soft tyres. So we're on lap number 6. This really is the sort of lap where you start to feel the soft tyre give up. When we come through the second checkpoint here just after this corner, down through the left-handed corner, we'll come to the second split. You'll see that we lose quite a lot of time through that middle sector as the tyres start to degrade. So I think we've lost nearly 7 tenths there, so we're probably on course now for around about a 131.3 or 4, and we know from earlier on that we can do a sort of 131.5 with a full fuel load on the medium. So with the fuel burned off, we should gain a few tenths. This looks like the optimum time to pit. So into the pits will come, medium tyres on. Again, I'm just going to stress that at the end of this run, for the pit stop being a little bit shorter than it will be in the real race, we will be adding 1 second on. The way I calculate that is through the pit time. So in this run here, we're in the pits for 15.3 seconds. I've checked it with the full grid and it's actually 16.3 seconds, so that's why I know I need to add 1 second on. Out the pits we come now. We will rejoin the action on the final lap here on the medium tyres, and then we'll start taking a look at those lap times and see whether we kind of did pit at the optimal time. So our last flying lap on the soft tyres was a 131.2. Now I calculated we're probably on for about a 131.5 on lap number 6 had we completed it and nodded into the pits. And our first flying laps on the mediums are 131.2, a 131.3, then a 131.4. So it looks like that probably was the ideal time to come into the pits. It was definitely sort of seemed to be the crossover where we could put on the harder compounded tyre, but just because we're fresher and with that fuel burned off, they're now a little bit quicker than our soft tyres that had done a few laps. Now, bit of a tardy lap on lap number 11 there, a 131.8. But we sort of recovered it a little bit on lap 10 for 131.6. So the medium tyres do feel pretty good on the second stint with the tyres, with the fuel burn down a little bit. Although on the last lap you certainly will start to feel them start to give way just a little bit compared to when they were fresh. This is a pretty tardy lap we do on the last lap here, but we have managed to get a pretty clean run in overall. We're going to head up the hill here towards the finish line. We've got a 20 minutes 02.6 to beat, I believe, and it looks like we're probably going to beat that quite handsomely as we come across the line. A 132.3 to finish was disappointing. I was looking to keep it in the 131s for the entirety of the medium stint. It's a 19 minutes 58.9. Let's add on 1 second for that pit stop, and that's a 1959.9, so in the region of our 3 seconds quicker than the 2 stop. So we've got all that information on the screen here for you to look over. So on paper, run under optimal conditions, no traffic to worry about, etc. The 1 stop is definitely coming in with the quickest overall finishing time. 2.8 seconds quicker than the 2 stop. Actually surprised me a little bit, but then 8.5 second pit loss is quite a lot to overcome over 6 laps with the soft tyres. Obviously we've got about a 1 second delta between the soft and the mediums in optimal condition, but as the laps progress then obviously that delta is going to come down a little bit as the medium tyres wear less than the soft tyres. So on that second stint on the 2 stop strategy you just can't make up that pit loss, and so the 1 stop is definitely the strategy I have to recommend for this one. It's certainly going to be the safest strategy as well. Obviously the 2 stop strategy does rely on you having a clear run, not losing any time to traffic, and you can never be guaranteed that to be the case. As for the no stopper on the mediums, I think that's a strategy we can pretty much rule out as being one you want to give too much consideration to. Even with optimal conditions we're still 6 seconds behind the 1 stop, and that's just far too much of a gap to really give it too much consideration. So yeah, for this strategy guide I am recommending the 1 stop. We're 3 seconds quicker than the 2 stop strategy. It's going to be the safest strategy as well. It's less reliant on clear track like the 2 stop strategy. I'm just happy that we've got a race here with a bit of strategy in it indeed, after a lacklustre 2 or 3 weeks with just the no stops. At least this one's going to be a guaranteed pit stop race, which means there's always going to be a little bit of variety in what you can do. You can maybe try and make something work. So I'm going to be doing this one quite a lot. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to certainly fire a few live streams in there over the course of the week as well, so please do join me for them if you can. But as always when it comes to these strategies, well, not as always, that's a lie because we don't do it for the Nordschleife, but for this one we are going to finish with a lap guide. We're in the Mercedes AMG GT3 from 2016. The brake balance is set to +3, and let's do a lap of Interlagos in this car here. So heading towards the start finish straight and reaching around about 165 miles an hour before we brake. We're looking for the 100 metre board, but we don't want to be braking there. We're braking maybe around about 75 metres. Make sure you get the car slowed down, try and hug that first apex, take plenty of curb on the second part of the Senna S, keeping it as tight into the curb as you can through the curve of turn number 3. If you get that wrong you can run wide and you will pick up a penalty. Then towards turn number 4, good overtaking opportunity. You're looking for the little path just after the 100 metre board. Be careful on the exit, catch that curb in the wrong way, it will drag you off the track. Could result in a spin. Even if you don't spin you can pick up a half a second penalty. Keep it as tight as you can in here to Ferratura. I think it's called Ferratura. You're looking for the sort of skid marks on the curb, that's your braking marker into the first of the hairpins. Keep this one nice and tight, use the curb to try and rotate the car. Early you can get on the power the better of course, and then just before the start of the curb on the right hand side there, a kind of braking reference. Again, try to keep it nice and tight. There's a bit of a bump here and a crest that you don't want to be hitting the power on, it can bring the car round. Try to keep it as tight as you can into the left hander curve there, or you might have to come off the power. And the last corner, vital that you kind of get a good exit because you're going to be carrying that speed all the way up the hill. Turns 14 and 15 are actually these curves here, so this is turn 14. I believe this one here is turn 15, just before the pit exit. But that's a lap of Interlagos in the Mercedes AMG GT3, brake balance set to +3. hopefully that has been of some use or value whatsoever. And all that's left to say is please do hit that like button, please do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hopefully see you out the track this week. I'm going to be doing this one quite a lot. We've got some DR to recover after the last few weeks of not really taking the races too seriously. So hopefully I'll see you out there. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you on the next one. Goodbye now.